what is it? Talk softly, carry a big stick.
Carry a big stick. There's a lot of TR.
I would say Romney's more, you know, carry a big stick and talk like you got a big stick.
Welcome to a special edition of News Beast here outside the U.S. Capitol Dome with Eli Lake, our intrepid national security reporter. Big night in the elections last night. Today, David Cameron and Barack Obama meeting, talking foreign policy. A lot to talk about. Eli, first let's just go over the elections. Santorum ended up surging in 2 states, Mississippi and Alabama. There was Romney spin that he might pull it out. Didn't happen. Not even Newt continuing his southern stop. Instead, Santorum winning 2 key southern states, Romney and Hawaii. How do you read this?
Well, it definitely raises Santorum's profile. And Santorum, who, I mean, I'm a national security reporter. I've covered the man for a long time. This is somebody who, before it was popular, before there was an Iraq war, has been a very strong advocate for supporting, not arming, but supporting politically, the political opposition in Iran and declaring U.S. policy to be regime change. Back in the W's first term, he pushed back on Santorum and told them, take that out of your bill, we're not going to support it if you have it in there. And Santorum likes to talk about this, but he's kind of been where I see a lot of Democrats ending up, which is you don't want to bomb, you don't want to sanction and harm the population, you don't think it's going to affect the decision-making of the people in Iran, and you're hard-headed enough to not have much faith in diplomacy, and so you'd like to see more solidarity and more support for Iran's democratic opposition. That's Rick Santorum.
Let's pivot to international politics. We've got David Cameron, conservative PM, Britain, meeting with the president, affirming their special relationship, but there's an interesting dynamic here. The conservative is the one arguing for more interventionist foreign policy on humanitarian grounds, specifically with Syria and Somalia, an area you're working on a lot.
Yeah.
However, them both
just got back from Somalia.
So I want to talk on that. But also, with regard to Iran, basically saying, trying to put the brakes on any unilateral Iraq-style intervention, at least in the near term, with regard to Israel. How do you read the dynamic where you have all of a sudden the British Prime Minister and Sarkozy being more hawkish about humanitarian intervention than the American President, which has traditionally been the leader on these things?
Well, it's interesting because, of course, David Cameron comes from the Tories, and the Tories in the UK were the conservatives that first turned on the Iraq War. And the Iraq War was, in many ways, especially in Britain with Tony Blair, who was a Labour PM, very much of a liberal humanitarian interventionist war. It has a neoconservative reputation because George W. Bush was the president and neoconservatives are the policymakers, but in the UK, this was a liberal internationalist war.
Was Woodrow Wilson a neocon?
According to John Judas of the New Republic, he was.
Okay.
But let's just say that here you kind of have, I think, a coming to terms with reality, that if you have a hands-off approach in places like Syria where there are these crises, and frankly in places like Somalia where you still have a huge burgeoning problem of not only piracy, but also potential for an al-Qaeda ally and affiliate and friend in al-Shabaab to take over the country, that there's no substitute for strong Western intervention. And it's interesting to see the leader of the current British coalition making that argument. Now, on the Iran side, I would imagine that the British calculation is, hey, wait a second, we just cut off Iran's central bank. We're responsible for destroying the Iranian rial. Let's give this pressure a chance, which we've been working to for a long time, before we jump the gun and move to military action. That is also, by the way, the Obama position. So you're seeing the Europeans and Obama on the same page in a lot of ways. But here's the catch. From the Israeli perspective, a lot of Israelis behind closed doors will tell you if they were not making noises, like if they don't get their act together, they're going to bomb soon, they would have never had the crippling sanctions that you're starting to see right now.
Santorum is seen as sort of this social conservative. Does he have some credentials on national security issues, particularly with Iran, that might be contributing to his strength that aren't being factored into some of the polls or conventional wisdom about his candidacy?
Well, in Santorum, I see a Wilberforce kind of Republican. I see somebody who believes that you have to use the superior firepower of the West and the military of the West to pursue moral and just outcomes, and in the 21st century language, human rights outcomes. So that's where Santorum's coming from. That's why Santorum was a leader in a lot of ways on Sudan early on, because he's a very devout Catholic, and he believes that his Catholicism requires not just a set of values on domestic issues, but also a sort of foreign policy vision. I think in Mitt Romney what you have is a kind of unabashed American exceptionalism, but an American exceptionalism that is cast in contrast to what he describes as Obama, as somebody who is, much more of a kind of multilateralist, and somebody who does not exert American hegemony in the world the way that a Romney would. Now, I think in some ways that's a lot of...
Think that's a straw man, maybe?
I think that if Obama was willing to send in Navy SEALs into a sovereign ally of Pakistan and kill bin Laden, he's willing to kill U.S. citizens in Yemen with drones, and so in some ways I think it's a straw man. In other ways, I think Obama's rhetorical style on the world stage is one that, is, to use a Bush word from the 2000s, is more humble. He's not as in your face. And I think that Romney, and if you read his book and you see how Romney approaches these things, Romney is much more saying, listen, we're the top dog still, and we're going to assert our authority. And I think, Obama is kind of a little bit more Teddy Roosevelt on that, What is it? Talk softly, carry a big stick.
Carry a big stick. There's a lot of TR.
I would say Romney's more, carry a big stick and talk like you got a big stick.
Somehow less pithy, but we're going to go with it.
Yeah,
Eli Lake, outside the Capitol.
Thank you, man.
Thanks,
All
man.
right.